Right guys, so my name is Gunther Swart. We're just quickly going to try and roll up our sleeves and get this exposure thing underway. In photography, we're always talking about the exposure triangle. So when all three parts come together, you get a perfect image. The main three factors here: shutter speed, aperture, and ISO. So depending on what you're photographing, you'll use different settings. Depending on the equipment that you're using, you'll have to use different settings and you'll be kind of limited. One of the factors, for instance, if you're shooting birding or wildlife, birds you would usually want to shoot at 1,000th, 250th of a second and upwards. If you're shooting landscapes and you want to do kind of water with that misty feeling, everything, you're going to want to focus your aperture down to a smaller aperture, a small light. So a setting like f16 or smaller, down to f22 for instance. Where if you're doing portrait photography, you're coming down, focusing on people, anything from f1.8 up to f8. If you're looking at ISO, you're very limited here according to the body that you're using. The lower the ISO, the sharper the image. If you're using crop sensors, you cannot push your ISO up very high. So you're pretty much limited to about 640 or 800. If you're shooting on a full frame, all of a sudden it changes everything. On full frames, you tend to be able to push it up to, let's say, 3,200, depending on what body you're using, even higher. This opens up all the different settings. If you're shooting landscapes over here, because of this limiting factor and the little amount of light that's coming in, your shutter speed will be slowed down. So you'll come down to, let's say, a 60th of a second or even slower. If you have a look at our blog, we've got a couple of articles on landscape photography where I've shot images down to 193 seconds for a single image. So again, sports, wildlife, things in action, you want to go really fast on the shutter. Landscape's a little bit slower. All these factors play together and that'll give you the exposure. So we'll break this episode down into three parts. We'll start focusing on each one of these parts, why shutter speed is as fast as it is, where the limiting factors are and where not, what aperture is, because this little guy, that's a pain. That little guy, as soon as you get this whole f-stop thing figured out and depth of field, it opens up a new world. The ISO is an extremely easy explanation, so we'll get around to all of these. Thank you very much for watching. Join our channel and subscribe to our Instagram channel as well. Thank you.